keep wanting to call her Trish, but she's Trisha. It's Trisha.
I mean, he's been doing good. We go to the park every day.
Doing off leash there?
Yeah, we throw the ball. Me, him, and my little brother, we throw the ball.
That's awesome.
He was on a slide too. He came down the slide by himself.
Did he?
Yeah.
Did you get a video of it?
Yeah.
Hey, boy. Come on. Come on, Thor. Hey, good.
Much calmer on the bed this time too.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're able to do a hell of a lot more with him right now, which is great. The problem is there's quite a bit of intensity behind it. You know what I mean? So obviously, as you can see, this stuff can become very dangerous for sure. I'm gonna do some handling first with him. I wanna kind of do like what we did last time with the vet visit simulating, right? So I'm gonna kind of just general checking, popping things on and off. Good. Oh, this is very good, buddy. Why don't you go ahead and grab some of those rewards here, and when I tell you to, I'm gonna have you try to reward him through the muzzle. We'll see if he takes them from you. Because I wanna start to, because obviously he's doing very well with this, but you can tell he's a little concerned still. Yeah. So I just wanna start to develop a little bit more of a positive association with it. So I'm gonna pick up the paw. All right, go ahead and tell him good.
Good boy. Keep trying.
He said, no thanks. No thanks. Thor, come. Good job, buddy. That's very good, buddy. Go ahead and try again.
Good boy. Here, boy.
There you go.
Yeah, grab that one.
Did he take it?
This right here is stuck.
Try it. Oh my.
Here. There you go. And then I ordered this stuff too for his paws.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You see, it's kind of
Yeah.
he do a lot of running now.
Oh yeah.
Every day we run.
That's great. All right, go ahead and reward again.
Good boy. Here. Here.
You're such a drama queen, Thor.
You don't want it?
I said, nope. No, thank you.
Where the fuck did it go?
And no big deal if not. I mean, some dogs, you know, they still get uncomfortable by this. The only thing I care about is that he's not acting on it.
Yeah.
Which is great. Good job, buddy. He said, because I'm nervous.
Is that what that?
Nerves. Yeah, lipping licks is generally a sign of the dog being a little bit uncomfortable with stuff.
Oh, okay.
Good job. It's pretty good. Good job, buddy. Good job. Okay. Awesome. I know. Hello. Hello, buddy. Thor's hitting slam dunks all day. Yeah, he was much better today about us coming in. I mean, he didn't break it at all.
Yeah, that's what I try to, like, my mom friend, she come over here, but she's scared of him.
Yeah.
And I try to, and he barks at her.
Sure.
He barks at her a lot. I don't know why, but he just barks at her a lot.
Well, make sure you definitely correct him for it if you catch him doing that.
Yeah, I think it's because, like, she's scared, so, like...
Yeah. We definitely will see that dogs will sometimes pick up on that.
Yeah.
That being said, the only way that he would still be barking when they're coming over and picking up on that is if we're allowing him to, right? So you want to be just as firm on him about that as you would if he broke the bed stay like we did last time when we worked on that, you know?
Yeah. And she just be like, I just want you to put him up. So
sure.
I just put him up before she even...
Well, I mean, listen, that's obviously fine, right? But even if he's in the crate barking, make sure you're still correcting him for that.
as far as other dogs, like
Sure.
when can I take him around like my friend's dog?
Yep. So when it comes to introducing your dog to other dogs, you've got to make sure first and foremost he's comfortable just being around the people and the dogs first. Or not the people and the dogs, sorry. The people in the environment that he's going to be in first. From there, the first couple times you do it, since you haven't done a lot of social... Oh, look at those 2 cats right there. They're like, let me in. Since you haven't done a ton of socialization yourself with him, just use your muzzle initially.
Okay.
But he was very good with the other dogs. Dogs was never really a big concern with him at the facility. I don't think he ever really had any issues with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so either. It's just,
Yeah.
I was just always, I know like he was bigger than my friend dog.
Sure.
And I just think he played a little rough.
Yeah, he can be a little bit of a rough player for sure. So like I said, just use your muzzle initially, and if it starts hitting a point where like he's being too pushy, right, you notice it seems like he's kind of bullying the other dog a little bit, and the other dog's getting annoyed about it, you would just step in and give him a correction to get him to chill out.
Okay.
And you know, another good way to do it is like a neutral territory. If they trust their dog off leash, like you guys could come here, for example, and the field, like in the baseball diamond, you could let them both run around there for a little bit. Like I said, have his muzzle on and then end it and go home, you know? The biggest thing you want to avoid is a lot of people when they do dog socialization with other dogs is they'll do it for really long periods of time. So they'll be like going to their friend's house to have a barbecue or something for 5 hours and take their dog with them. And it's just entirely too long. Yep.
When we walking, he'll walk so close to me on the leash.
Sure.
It's kind of like he cutting me off kind of sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
Sure.
Because I'll be like, Thor, come on, bro.
So I would ask myself 1 of 2 questions with that. So I would ask myself, 1, is he cutting me off because he's distracted by something going on over there, right? So let's say I'm walking and he's over here and there's a person over there and he's like cutting me off because he's like fixated on what's going on over there. I would correct him for that and I would teach him to tighten back up. If I had just given him a correction for something and he's just kind of leaning against me, just trying to make sure he's in the right spot, that one you got to kind of just let slide. And, you know, sometimes you could just kind of like push him over a little bit or just kind of reclaim some of that space from him. The one thing I would recommend for you that I noticed while you were walking him with the leash, though, is when that leash goes on, you're still kind of holding a lot of tension in it. Not a lot, but a little bit, right? Where you want to pretend, like, look how beautifully he walks with you right now when he's off of the leash. Pretend that leash was on and you weren't even holding it, you know? You don't want to be using it at all to be pulling him or communicating with him or anything. Because even if you're sitting there with the teeniest bit of tension on it, that's actually going to cue his brain to want to fight it and push into it more, right? So when we're walking with him, you're kind of doing like this, right? And he's walking pretty well right now, but you're kind of holding just a little bit of tension on that leash like that, which is going to make him want to keep pulling into it, right? Where what I want you to do is this. Like there's 0 tension on that leash, right? So it's no different than if he was off of the leash, or almost even simulate like how you like to wear that leash around your neck or something. You're kind of walking like this, where it's like you're not inclined to want to pull, right? And it forces you to communicate clearly with the e-collar. So generally though, as long as you got a nice big loop in that leash like that, where he could totally get ahead of you, but he's choosing not to, that's all that we want. There we go.
Down. No.
Now with your corrections that you're, there we go, perfect. With your corrections you're giving, make sure after you tell him no, you're repeating your command again after.
Okay.
And then also still give him just another second longer before you tell him no. I want to see that he's really committed to not doing it or doing it. There we go.
I don't understand why it takes him so long to.
A lot of it, honestly, could be if you're telling him no too fast, like while he's still thinking about it, it'll stop some of that thinking process, right? Well, we want to give him the ability to totally problem solve this.
Right. Thor, come. Down.
Same deal, give him a minute there. Keep waiting. There we go. Or let's say hypothetically, because you're not waiting long enough to say no, let's say you tell him down and he's not doing it, and then you say no, and as you're saying no, he's starting to do it. Same deal, that could start telling him, wait, maybe that's wrong, which we don't want to do, obviously.
Thor, come.
Yeah. Yeah, that's much better. Nice and loose on it. It's usually when the dog starts feeling like they're restrained, that's when their behavior starts to kind of intensify, or they want to pull forward to break through that restraint. So by making sure we're not making them feel restrained in the first place with the leash, that will help just make sure he walks more calmly with you.
One day I had to get my little brother off the bus. I had him, oh, it's almost time to get him off the bus anyway. I had him off leash, and he was sitting, somebody stopped. They was like, oh my God, he's so adorable and
Yeah.
obedient. This fool turns around and starts barking.
Yeah.
I'm like, Thor, come on, bro. They just gave you a compliment and you turn around and start barking.
Now still, I want you to make sure, because this is a trap I can see people fall into sometimes when they have a dog like Thor, who had a history of some reactivity, right, maybe a little aggression, stuff like that, is that because you're able to do more things with him, you're gonna start noticing more things like that randomly pop up, just because they're new situations that he wouldn't have been exposed to before. And if we let those things slide, we'll see him very quickly start reverting back to getting really out of control with it. So I want you going into scenarios, like right now, I'm prepared where if somebody were to walk around this corner here and startle him, and he were to start barking, that I can give a big correction for that still, like, you know, a 70, an 80, something like that. Or if I'm gonna go to a situation where I know there's gonna be some people around or something, like you're picking up your brother from the bus or something, I'm gonna make sure I'm in a position to nip any sort of nonsense in the butt, right?
I've been quick with the
Yeah.
with the corrections and stuff. Like, I really haven't had to correct him that much because I mean he's been fine.
Sure.
He hasn't really been like
Good.
as far as like barking and lunging at
Yeah.
other dogs and people and stuff. He's been cool.
Good. You just want to be aware of it, right?
Yeah,
Just as you're in new situations.
Although I do be nervous.
Sure.
Like I had him sitting down. This old lady passed.
Yeah.
He was kind of like
Yep.
peeking forward. And I'm like,
Yep. Again, a new picture, right?
yeah.
So make sure, you know, in that context, for example, as you're passing people, if you notice, whatever, there's somebody in a wheelchair or something he may not have seen before, give yourself just a little extra space, you know, just in case, right? I always kind of default to, I want to be far enough away from whatever potential trigger where if my dog were to kind of lunge at them, they couldn't get all the way to them.
Right. Yeah.
Like I said, you've done a really good job with him. You just got to keep keeping him successful. That's the key, you know, is be mindful of, even though he's so much better now, you're able to do all these more things, be mindful and respectful of, he still always has a little bit of potential in him, you know, and you just got to just play it cool and play it safe with stuff. So just recapping 3 things here that I want you to focus on. So thing number 1, your leash, much looser on your leash as you're walking him, obviously. Thing number 2, when you're giving your commands, primarily your downs and stuff, give him much longer before you either tell him no or before you repeat that command again, because I want to make sure that obviously he's given enough time to process that and fully complete the command, obviously. And then thing number 3 is as soon as you get your insurance situated and you get that appointment scheduled, let me know, and we'll do the vet visit together to make sure that goes well. I think he looks awesome.
Yeah,
I think you're doing really good.
I want to talk about 3 things,
I like it.
which are, I sent you a video
Yep.
of her at the dog park. So 3 goals. One is we have like New Jersey.
Mhm.
I want to walk in the woods, and the paths are all like 3 feet wide with trees on either side.
Let's start with the first thing you mentioned, obviously just the general overarching goal of just passing other dogs, tight quarters, things like that. So I did watch that video. Give me your take on that video.
I thought it was all filmed like too far away for you to actually see how quivery and like hairspring she was. She
Sure.
looked like, I'm like, he's gonna look at this and feel like, what's your problem?
No.
He's not fine.
I understand. Well, I would agree with you. It was definitely a little far away for me to see like all the little like nuanced details and stuff. That being said, I still think she did relatively well, right? So even though she may have, excuse me, even though she may have been like kind of on edge, she didn't really make any poor choices per se, I would say. I think she did relatively well with that, and I thought you did a pretty good job of kind of managing her, all things considered, through the environment, and especially given the fact that there was a decent amount of stuff going on. I mean, you know, there was quite a few dogs there, quite a few people, stuff like that. So I think she did relatively well too. Now, how she was in that video, would you say that's pretty consistent to how she has just been lately, or is it usually better, or is it usually worse than that?
No, that was pretty consistent.
Now, the one part of the video when there was like a person like trying to pet her or something like that, where she did break command. I think you said in the video, you know, you corrected, but it didn't seem that she felt it. Do you recall like what level you were at roughly there?
I believe I was at a 35-40,
Okay.
and she just didn't seem to feel it, and then the lady was just up in my space thinking about it.
Sure. Okay. Well, I would say still, you know, another consistent thing is 35-40 is still not that high, really, right? So as you get to this stage, so you've essentially, in your progression of this, have gone from reactive dog to still reactive dog, but practicing better impulse control, but still definitely wants to be reactive dog. And when we go from like that jump to dog is kind of past the reactivity and no longer super concerned about the other dogs, generally speaking, the missing link at that point is we struggle not in the easy situation, but we struggle in the really hard situation. And even though those levels like 30, 40, stuff like that may have been good for the easy situations, they're definitely not good enough for the high situations, right? Or the hard situations. So a lot of that is going to come down to now, you know, I think there's this perception that as the dog gets better with their behavior, the level winds up going down, right? Where I actually find it's the complete opposite. Where like my dogs, for example, if I'm out working them, generally speaking, their level is set very high at all times, like 70, 80, 90, you know what I mean? Like, because if they're going to make a mistake at this point, it's no longer the minute little mistakes. They're I want to try to chase this squirrel. I want to go after this deer, right? I want to, whatever, any number of big distraction that's just going to be too enticing for them, right? So you're kind of at that same boat right now where she's learned that if a dog is politely walking by, even though she may want to go up to them, she's like, you know, like it's not motivating enough given the correction in that situation that I've received. But in the situation where she really gets overstimulated by the other dogs, she knows that correction isn't motivating enough for those situations still, right? So a lot of this is going to come down to not necessarily you changing what you're doing from like a routine standpoint. Like you're still implementing the same drills, right? The only difference is you've really got to big time up the accountability a lot more, and that's how we really get to that next level with it. And then my second question for you, and forgive me if we've talked about this already, but are you using food on your walk also? Like, are you using rewards? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And she's pretty motivated for those?
Yes.
Great. And where are you implementing them right now?
So
Yes.
every time she sees another dog.
Sure.
And that took her arousal level from like a 5 to a 17. Over time,
Yeah, sure.
every time she saw a dog,
Yeah.
she just got crazier because dog meant I'm going to get a shit ton of treats.
Okay, so couple adjustments to how I want you to handle the reward. So let's talk about, first off, what went wrong with what you were doing in the past and why that felt like it made it worse. Now, I'm not saying it didn't make it worse, but 9 out of 10 times an incorrect use of rewards can just create too much franticness. And the kind of age-old method we'll hear of like scatter the treats everywhere all over the ground, that teaches, in my opinion, like I understand the idea behind it is like give the dog something to be distracted by that's not the dog, but in addition to teaching the dog to get really excited for rewards, you're teaching the dog to get really excited for rewards, but not seek them through you, right? So it creates this scatterbrain of I gotta go over here and over here and over here and over here and look for all the treats that I can find and not pay attention to mom anymore and this and that, and it just gets very messy. So I don't really like that method a whole lot. That I think a lot of trainers will use as like a management tool. Like if you're like totally losing control, you can kind of scatter them and get yourself a second of, right? But I don't usually use that as an actual method for training. Now, here's the thing, right? Let's say because we want the treats coming from us, let's say we teach her to access reward through us in the presence of other dogs, and she starts developing an association of, every time I see another dog get really, really excited because I'm getting a treat from mom. That's not really a bad problem, right? The bad problem is when it's uncontrollable, right? Is when we lose control over the dog because they're in that state of mind. So we just have to be strategic about where we're implementing them, right? And the way that I generally will do it is, in addition to the drill you're already working, let's say we're walking down the street, right? Walking down the path, other dogs coming. I'm gonna get my dog into that sit. I'm gonna have my e-collar set up pretty high, right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reward for any disengaging from the other dog, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that she's looking at me. That just means if she looks away from the dog but maintains her sit position, I'm gonna reward for that. And I'm gonna keep the reward frequency as high as I need to early on in this training process. So for some dogs, when we do this, what'll happen is we'll be walking, dog comes, put the dog in a sit, dog staring at the dog, staring at the dog, staring at the dog, and you'll just get this for like a second, boom, good, reward, right? And then they'll look back at the dog for a minute, and then maybe look away again, good, boom, reward, right? And sometimes those first handful of times, you're rewarding 7, 8 times each time you pass by another dog, and what starts to happen is the dog starts anticipating, dog comes, I get put in a sit, keep the attention on mom, because the rewards are gonna be coming through her. But it doesn't create that frantic state of look all over the ground for where the treats are gonna be, right? It just teaches really good engagement, essentially, right? And the key is because we're implementing that sit also and we're enforcing that sit, you're not gonna get like the uncontrollable engagement where she's like jumping and doing this and doing that, because we're giving her something clear she has to do to access those rewards also. So there's a degree of control behind it.
She's still like, she's more focused on me at that point, and she's more like sneaking glances at the dog.
Sure.
And then getting excited and that.
That all that has to do with is how we're giving the reward and what we're enforcing, right? So let's take both of the key things you mentioned. One was obviously she starts getting really bitey with the reward, right? And like snapping it kind of out of your hand. And the other one was that she breaks the sit command, right? So breaking the sit command, obviously we're just gonna correct for that, right? Like she's still gotta hold the sit position. So we're gonna give an e-collar correction for that just like we would anything else. As far as the snappiness, again, I get into, again, given the fact that, doing competitive dog training, we have very motivated dogs we're working with and stuff. You just have to give the reward. It's like literally the first step of teaching somebody like about dog training and reward placement is like, don't give the reward where the dog is gonna bite you if they snap for it, right? So a lot of people make the mistake of they do this, right? So they got their fingers kind of put together and then the dog's mouth is just coming in and it's just snap, right? And yeah, like my Malinois, for example, if I try to feed him that way, like I'm losing a tip of my finger. Like for sure, right? And you can't really tell a dog like, oh, like take it calmer, this or that, because then you're kind of defeating the purpose of using the reward, which is leveraging all that engagement, right? So we just teach, you gotta feed it with an open hand, right? So you give that reward, boom, like this. But again, the impulse control side of things, of having some accountability to if she does start jumping for those rewards and stuff, making sure we're still correcting for that is really what will solve that issue. So, and the last thing I would say to that is I think sometimes people also give rewards very frantically, right? So we're like, boom, like we're trying to like shove this thing into the dog's face like as fast as possible to like distract them kind of thing. So in addition to us feeding it improperly, we're doing it with a lot of intensity that kind of encourages that jumpiness. We're all of a degree of like, let's say this, my hand here is the dog, right? And I'm gonna reward them and I have the reward right here. Instead of me just going, choop, 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 I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna make sure the dog is stable. If they jump up for it, no, boom, right? Once they're stable, I'll kind of slowly bring it to them and then open palm it.
I don't know if you remember, like, the last time I talked to you, I interviewed a bunch of trainers.
Yeah,
in the area,
I remember.
and they were all like, yeah, we're going to record 2 weeks. She's a
Yeah.
chronic mess, and that's what she needs. And
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not the environment she's going to be in.
Yeah, no,
Even that environment there is not the environment we're normally in. We pass like a
Yep.
couple of dogs a day.
yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I think, you know, and like I said, you've come a long way with it, and it's just gonna take a little bit more fine tuning with stuff, right? And still definitely try, I know it's tricky, but like the videos are very helpful. Like me being able to see that video and the last time you sent me those videos on the trail, like those were very helpful to be able to see. So continue trying to do that, especially as you make these 2 adjustments so I can see how those are going, you know? And you could even like go to the park and like set your phone up somewhere and just post yourself up on that trail like by the dog park and just wait for people and dogs to come by, you know?
That's what we did yesterday.
Yeah, cool. So as far as the trails and stuff is concerned, that's how I would handle that at least right now, right? Now I also notice you're using the muzzle. It's fine, obviously, nothing wrong with that. Have you noticed anything different since you've started implementing that?
I've mostly used that to try to get people to not come to like.
Yeah. Don't overthink it. What I mean by that is, let's say that situation happens, right? And listen, this is good that there's not that many places you need to correct. That means she's obviously learning something from this, right? But let's say I'm walking my dog, right? And there's another dog and I have my level set to what I think is motivating, what I think is pretty high, right? And we're walking and she's holding it, and then she breaks command and lunges at the dog or something. I tell her no and tap it, and it doesn't seem like she feels it. I'm literally just gonna, like, I'm not even gonna look at the remote. I'm just gonna give that dial a big turn and then tap it again, right? So you need to capitalize on every situation, meaning if you give a correction and you don't think she cared that much about it, you don't have to say no again. You just need to turn the dial up and tap it again so that she still gets the bigger correction and associates it with that initial no, right? So that's the biggest thing I do. And that happens with my dogs sometimes. Like I'll be for a walk and I'll correct them for something and it didn't really seem like they cared about it. And yeah, I'll just turn up and tap again. So.
Alright, so
And
that.
yeah, and last thing to that, don't overthink the level. Like I said, like I literally don't. I just big turn, right? Just big turn, right?
Okay, cool. So let's see, there's a bed right here.
Yep. Is that your back door?
That's
Right there?
the back door.
Okay.
What I usually do is I have the cat sit here
Mhm.
while we're like waiting to get up, and she's like totally quivering and loading here.
Yep.
And I've never used the e-collar for this inside.
Mhm.
And probably 25% of the time she gets off place and I have to correct her and tell her to go back.
Mhm.
So, but I guess I have to start earlier because the way that we get there is I'm like thinking it's time for them to go outside, so I start walking back over, and she's over here,
Mhm.
and then the little one comes over, and then she's like backs up, right over her on her way, and this one will like stupidly come right here,
Yeah.
and the other one backs up on top of her.
Sure.
So she has another bed right there.
Mhm.
And when I'm thinking about it, I put her in that bed first, and that is more successful, but just
Well, there.
a plan.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 things to this, right? So thing number 1 is you're not going to tell her to not be excited to go outside, right? Like that's not like if I were to go let my dogs out the back door, like they're pretty jacked up like in the morning, like when I go to let them out as well, right? And frankly, they've kind of just learned to like maneuver themselves and like give each other space where they need to. But there's times that one of them kind of like falls on the other, like, things like that, right? Now, if I really needed to manage it, like in the case of like, let's say I had an older dog that I was worried was gonna get like injured or something like that, yeah, I would just have to take the time then at that point to manage the situation using my obedience commands, right? And if we're gonna manage the situation using our obedience commands, yeah, we've gotta be in a position to enforce it. That's it, right? So you realistically could, yeah, every time you go to let him out the back door, put her on the bed, right? Open that back door, let the little dog go out first, and then release her to go out, But that would be something you would have to correct and enforce if she doesn't do it if you want to get the reliability, right? So that's thing number one.
Should I go see e-collar for that? Because also, let's see. There's a green squirt bottle on that counter right there.
Sure.
Since that lives there, that's usually what I do. I correct her with that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, we're going through this
Yeah, I would.
times a day, every day.
Yeah. I think the e-collar is going to be easier for it. I mean, that's how I enforce all of the commands with my dogs. And again, it doesn't need to be a crazy high correction by any means. It's just, hey, you just got to wait there, right? And if you make that your routine of something you consistently do and she realizes every time, again, there's an e-collar correction for breaking it, we get her put back on, and then we let her out, you're going to see that she'll get much, much calmer with it. Now, in addition to that, this kind of, your 2 points here kind of go hand in hand, which is like the barking and freaking out in the yard. And the spatial awareness towards the other dog. As we address what is so stimulating outside and the problematic behaviors outside, it does make the act of going outside slightly less arousing, right? Because, there's not as much for her to go out there like and get herself wound up about and start freaking out and get her, adrenaline up to like a level 15 by any means, right? So yeah, I would definitely make your routine, if that's something you're concerned about as far as her stepping on the other dog and stuff, just utilizing your bed stay, you're just gonna have to be consistent about enforcing it. That really is gonna be the key with it. And, like I said, it's definitely possible. That's just not something I really do with my dogs because it's not a position that I have to worry about too much. Now the barking stuff, so you said you let her out, right? And then she just goes out there and just starts barking and freaking out at stuff. And you said it's not really triggered towards something?
It doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it is a noise, it could be a noise that's happening like 5 houses away.
I gotcha.
She'll just put her head up in the air and start barking on her way as she runs across the yard.
Yep.
Other times, legitimately, there's a person or a dog next door.
Yeah.
And she'll bark at that. But
Yeah. Well, if it's
she's just barking.
if it's triggered towards something, right? Even if it's something, like you said, a noise 5 houses down, that's still, I would consider towards something. She's still barking at the noise, right? It may not be visible, but it's not like she's just going out and literally nothing's going on and she's just happy to be alive and barking, right? It's she's being triggered by something still, right? That one's really easy. You got to start correcting for it, right? When I have my dogs in the yard, right, I don't allow any sort of reactivity towards things going on. And the way our house is set up, like our neighbor's driveway kind of goes along the back fence. So there's a lot of times the kids are playing in the driveway or they're taking their trash up and down or this or that. In the past, in the old place I lived, there was a lot of deer and stuff like that would be on the outside perimeter of our fence. And that was something I just got under control as soon as I moved into those places. The deer at the first place, I would let the dogs out, and anytime they went into the yard, they had to have their e-collars on. Again, it was turned up very high, and if they started reacting to anything outside of that fence, I definitely disciplined for that. And the cool thing is, like, this is going to go hand in hand with your reactivity, because reactivity starts in the house. You know this is one of the first things we ever talked about, right? So if you're having reactivity towards things outside of the fence, which is still a barrier, and she realizes she can't do that, she's going to be much less likely to do it when you're out and about on your walks.
Okay.
That one should be a pretty easy one, though. I mean, you just got to start getting on it. But that's another one I would definitely recommend, and that one will be easy for you to film, to send to me. Just a quick video of, like, the next 2 times you let her out in the yard. Hey, I don't know if it's as beautiful there as it is today out, obviously, but today's pretty darn nice out. So, it'd be a great opportunity to let her outside and hang out there for 20-30 minutes. And if you start noticing she's reacting at something, get a video, give your correction, obviously, and see that she totally stops when you give that correction for it. And we're just gaining back control of all these little places. Like, this stuff really is fairly straightforward from the standpoint of most of your issues just come down to you either putting in place a good management technique to keep her focused in if she isn't necessarily doing anything incorrect, and if she is doing something incorrect, just making sure she cares enough about the accountability and the consequence for it. But I definitely would like to see you start adding the reward in on the walk, especially since she's at this place where she is doing pretty well with it. On those ones where she holds the sit, if we could start reinforcing that with the reward, you're going to see that attention totally shift away from that dog onto you.